So recently I played The Missing, a short little puzzle platformer game developed by White Owls and directed by Swery65. I think this is the first Swery game in ever that I've managed to complete from start to finish. I really enjoyed The Missing. It had a shockingly really great story and a lot of fun puzzles. The main gimmick of the game reminded me of Never Dead a lot actually, if that game didn't fucking suck. After beating the game and streaming the ending to my friends, we were talking about Swery and his other games and stuff he's made, like Deadly Premonition 1 and 2, Good Life, and the upcoming Hotel Barcelona. After talking for a short bit, we ended up back in one spot specifically. One game that we've discussed a good amount in the past, and something I have played before, but never really got the chance to finish. Easily his most ambitious project next to Deadly Premonition 1, and something that got unceremoniously cut off and shut off from the world before it could even get its foot through the door. That game is Spy Fiction! No, I'm just fucking with you, it's D4. D4 is an episodic point-and-click adventure game for the Xbox One. It's in the same vein as the Telltale's Walking Dead games, Wolf Among Us, and Tales from the Borderlands. D4 was a collaboration project with Microsoft and Access Games, who at the time was only known for Deadly Premonition. Around this time, Swery wasn't as well recognized as a game developer as he is now. There were some people who knew about Deadly Premonition 1, but it wasn't discussed as much back then, and when it was, people would just talk about how much the game fucking sucked. You'd think then it'd be a strange idea to get this Japanese game developer to make a breakout exclusive for your console then, right? The only thing that would make it worse if it was a Kinect exclusive. Oh fuck, wait no, that's what it was. Yeah, D4 was a Kinect exclusive for the Xbox One. Back in 2013, the Xbone was really in dire need of anything. I remember like it was yesterday, seeing E3 all those years ago, and the only games they even had back then were what? Rise, Son of Rome, Dead Rising 3, Killer Instinct, and I don't know, fucking Loco Cycle.
Freddy Rodriguez?
With the exception of a couple, the Xbone didn't really launch with any games that would sell people on getting it. All the other games it had, like COD Ghosts and Battlefield, which were the biggest shooters at the time, were also available on other platforms like PC and PlayStation 4, which the PS4, pretty much everybody had one. Not to mention, the Xbone wasn't really focused on games, but TV and sports. The machine that was built to play fucking Halo. However, it did get some games the very following year.
Yo, I got the new rock game.
Well, it got Sunset Overdrive and Master Chief Collection, but I fondly remember playing MCC at launch, and whew, man, if you weren't there for that, you lucked the fuck out, dude. Basically, around that time, if you owned an Xbox One, you bought a $500 paperweight. So Microsoft decided, we should probably actually get some developers to make some games for this thing. Sell it, you know? So they decided to go to a bunch of different game developers to help make console exclusives for them. Two of them in specific being Japanese. Those games being Crimson Dragon and D4. D4 was actually meant to be an Xbox 360 Kinect game. Swery thought he could make something unique and creative using this brand new hardware. There's a couple of screenshots and early builds of D4 which got far enough into development to have the plane level built, along with a majority of its characters done. The art style looking very different compared to the released game, looking more similar to a Scanner Darkly than the regular comic book style the game goes for. Development of D4 restarted entirely to be made for the Xbox One and its newer version of the Kinect, taking advantage of this brand new hardware and now a much higher budget and production value with the backing of Microsoft. There is, however, a very big problem with D4, and it's not the game's fault. D4 was unveiled with the announcement of the Xbox One, and this is the only major marketing the game ever got for fucking ever. It didn't help that the trailer for D4 didn't tell you what the game was about, other than it's just a Kinect murder mystery game made by Swery, who nobody even knew who he was at the time. I highly doubt gamers around 2013 ever heard of the acclaimed survival horror masterpiece Extermination. Did you? Yeah, I thought so. Now, D4 being a Kinect game was something planned from the very start. As mentioned before, it was being developed for the 360 before being restarted for the Xbone. And D4, if it was good enough, would be something to sell people on the new Kinect. Give them a reason to actually own and use one, since you were forced to get the Kinect back then when you got an Xbox One. It was Microsoft's big push at that time to have more interactive experiences, or whatever their excuse was. But all the Kinect did was target people who used it as their microphone in Call of Duty lobbies. You could tell when somebody had a Kinect mic in a COD lobby, because they would be the only ones there that's 500 feet deep in the Atlantic Ocean speaking through a diving suit. So D4 was not only trying to win people on buying an Xbox One, but also be the reason why they would want to use their Kinect. It was a very, very big order from them. But since the game had next to no marketing at all, it never really took off with that. It didn't help that since Phil Spencer stepped up as CEO of Xbox in 2014, he made the decision to cut the Kinect requirement for purchasing an Xbox One, cutting the price down from $500 to $400. A good move from a consumer perspective, but not for Swery, since this change only happened about 3 months before D4's launch, and even still, the game got next to no coverage or marketing from Microsoft at all. Not even a launch date for the game or how much it would even cost. So the game just dropped on September 14th, 2014, just a day before Swery told some random guy at a game show that it would come out tomorrow! Again, it's still having little to no marketing at all other than the shitty little booth at Tokyo Game Show. You know, in the one country where there's probably like 12 people who own an Xbox, sitting nicely with their copies of Ninja Gaiden Black and fucking SMT9 and Dino Crisis 3. So to nobody's surprise, D4 sold like total shit. Is it because the game itself sucks? Deadly Premonition was a pretty polarizing game to most considering its quality. Well, let's find out. For D4's kind of late 10th anniversary, let me show you the story of a man with a very
strange fate.
Hey, look. It's like I've grown wings.
Just gonna make this clear right now, this video is gonna be a bit more different from my other reviews, and more in line with my Lollipop video, actually. Where it's less of me talking about the gameplay aspects, gimmicks, and story separately, I'm gonna be going through the game more in a linear order, talking about all the gameplay aspects and basic plot beats as they show up. At least for the first 2 episodes, being the Prologue chapter and Episode 1. Once we get to Episode 2 proper, I'll start going more in-depth on the story and analyzing everything, and also some extra spoilery stuff. If you haven't played D4 and can't guess why I'm doing this, just wait and see. Also, most of the information I've gotten for this game comes mostly from the Hikiko Media video about what exactly happened to this game. It's also where I got most of my information during the beginning section of this video, considering pre-release stuff. So if you are considering playing this game for yourself, I'd think again for a moment, since it's about 10 years since this game came out and there still isn't a Season 2. If you do want to play it, find it really cheap or just pirate it. But if you have played D4 before, hi, hello. I'm going to be glazing this game for the next half hour. I just want to talk about this game now since it's been on my mind ever since I beat it and I can't stop fucking thinking about it, man. It's like a brain worm. This shit keeps me up at night, dude. D4 starts with a literal cold opening, as you're in a freezing forest during the wintertime, playing as a little girl walking across a frozen lake. This girl we find out later to be Peggy Oldman. This is where we get to learn the basics of D4 and how the game controls. The game has a point-and-click based movement system, where you hover over the icons over these points on the ground to walk to the next area. In these small areas, you can look around to investigate your environments, where you can hover over objects to see short descriptions of everything, push them, and discover hidden credits you can use at the shop to unlock later. Also along with hidden costumes and outfits you can get for each of the characters. Doing just about anything will reward you with credits or hidden costumes and collectibles, so it is best to investigate everything you can. Walking across, we can see Peggy's dad watching us walk along the ice, as we inch in closer and closer to this white owl in the middle of the lake. We try poking at it and it flies away, somehow managing to crack all of the ice below Peggy. The game fades out to white, starting the main story proper, starring Private Investigator David Young. A man set out to find whoever attacked him and killed his wife, Peggy Oldman. The only clues he has to go off is that it's a drug-related murder due to the use of a new drug called real blood. And the last thing Peggy told him months before she died: look for D. For the past 2 years, David has been trying everything he can think of. Every single person whose name starts with a D, but only to little to no avail. The way he searches for people who could be related is with his new abilities he gained after being shot, allowing him to travel back into the past to a certain time period as long as he has something related to that person he's looking for, called mementos. It could be anything from a shoe to a pen or a baseball. As long as it's related to someone during that time period, he can go back to it. David also gets help from his friend, Forrest Kaysen. Well, not that Forrest Kaysen. Well, yes and no, actually. He is a character in spy fiction, and you do talk to an FK in The Missing, but it's not the same guy. It's just a reoccurring character and name in Swery's games, just as a little nod. Forrest, or Teddy, as David calls him, is a narcotics officer in the Boston Police Department that helps him out on his investigation to find out who killed his wife. Since he's leading in the narcotics office, he has tons of information on what they believe is the source of the cause, being real blood. Why and how is a narcotics officer helping this private eye? Don't worry about it. David and Forrest have been friends since the police academy, so it does kind of make sense as to why he would stick his neck out like this for him. We also get introduced to Amanda, a weird freeloading girl who behaves like a cat and buys groceries for David, which is pretty much the only reason why she's still around. Teddy tells us about a recent incident on Flight AG-117, where a drug courier, Antonio Zapatero, managed to mysteriously vanish off the flight with no signs anywhere on the plane of escape. Teddy gives David a memento, being the badge of the marshal overlooking Zapatero, Derek Buchanan, for us to go back in time and see what's going on. That being our setup for the rest of the season. The prologue chapter is basically all that, just setup, establishing David, his motivations, his powers, and characters who are going to help him along the way. Right off the bat, it seems really interesting. It's a regular detective story with this unique supernatural twist and almost Lynchian-inspired writing with a unique spin and great adaptation of modern adventure games. When I first played this game back in, I think it was 2015 on Games for Gold, I thought going in it was just going to be a regular old ape on the Telltale Games formula for adventure games, but honestly it does Telltale gameplay way better than those games do. As much as I do like the Walking Dead games and Tales from the Borderlands, those games are just so incredibly linear and railroady that it takes me out of the game entirely. There's basically no incentive or reward for exploring at all, and when you do, you're hardly ever rewarded for it. In D4, there's tons of objects you can interact with, collectibles, even side quests you could do for characters for more bits of story and unlocks. The story unlocks are also really important to the main plot too. You can learn some really crucial information relating to Peggy and David's lives before the murder happened, and what the big picture could turn out to be. Compare this to Tales from the Borderlands, where you walk around a corner and you can find 50 bucks you can use for something that basically makes no difference or impact on the game. In D4, there's tons of stuff to do and to explore. The main way you interact with the environment is using the Kinect, or your mouse, or controller via hand motions. It's very simple stuff, just moving left or right or up and down to open up doors and slam alcohol. On PC, all these motions and QTE segments are pretty easy to do, but it's still fun on how interactive even the most mundane stuff can be. This game has a ton of charm, and a majority of stuff you interact with shows it off. I always love this dumb little Legend of Zelda pose David does when he holds up his hockey trophy. Tons of jokes and all the side quests have great interactions with them, especially Cases. Teddy's side quests actually weren't meant to be in the game. These food scenes were never meant to exist. And I'm assuming Teddy was just supposed to have something else for you to do rather than just eat, but Access Games told Swery to put them in anyways because the food scenes in Deadly Premonition were well known and loved, so they gotta put them in D4. Honestly, I love all these. They're funny and talk about a lot of interesting stuff in a couple of these. You also get case files relating to murders and cases they talk about during these conversations, some relating to real blood, and some of them can just be like regular old murder cases that might be related. Oh yeah, thanks for the breakfast there, Teddy. You had a good few laughs, you know. Great fucking food, as always, man. Why did you have to give me this case file relating to the rape statistics in Boston relating to women and children? Why did you give this to me, man? This has nothing to do with the case. These scenes can also at the same time be fucking foul with the kind of shit Teddy eats. Like the chili dog part was disgusting, man. I can't look at that. I think the funniest parts, though, is just David fucking around with his food. Now that we do have full player control, though, after meeting everyone, we can explore all of David's apartment. Like I said, there's tons of cool stuff to find here. Hidden medals, clothes, story bits, and flashbacks you can activate with Peggy. Here we can also speak to Amanda, who acts as a shopkeeper. We can buy different outfits for each of the characters, most of them being Microsoft or other brand tie-ins like Fable, Gears of War, and Happy Wars, but also has references to Swery's other games like Deadly Premonition and Spy Fiction. Along with outfits, you can also buy different music you can play in your apartment and items to replenish your stamina, vision, and health. Your vision is a mechanic you can use by pressing the button in the top right, and it highlights all the interactable objects in the area, making it easier to look for stuff you might have missed. I personally never found much use of it, as I try to be as thorough as I can with games like these. I tend to not need stuff like this. Your health bar is self-explanatory. At QTE events, or occasionally when you interact with specific objects, you lose a bar of health. Lose it all, game over. You can find bandages or first aid kits around the levels, and also stuff to replenish your health at the shop along with your vision. Lastly is your stamina. In D4, every single thing you interact with, whether it's talking to people, opening doors, drinking tequila, drinking coffee, reading fortune cookie fortunes, you lose portions of your stamina bar. What happens when your stamina is drained? I really don't know. I haven't tried it for myself, since you can raise your stamina bar to be Yakuza 5 Saijima health bar levels of large. Not to mention, there's food all over the place that can replenish your stamina. Plus, if you do the side quest with Teddy, your stamina fully heals. So I was never really in any dire need of stamina, and also, with different outfits, you can raise your stamina by more than 60 points. They can cost a lot of credits, but if you're thorough and searching for everything in the level, you'll have a ton of them pretty much all the time. And if you do Amanda side quests, which are really easy to do since all you do is buy presents for her, from her, you get a 50% discount on one item you can purchase. So you can get that York suit way earlier than you think you can. This does make me wish the costumes didn't really give you these buffs and were only cosmetics, because there are a ton of great looking costumes, but you're gonna be entering the first chapter with this stupid ass yellow shirt if you want higher stamina. But that clears everything up for David's apartment for now. Let's get diving into the past and see what we can find out about this flight.
The lavatory. On an airplane. Another successful dive.
Once David manages to dive in, he meets a flight attendant, Olivia Jones.
David.
Little Peggy?
Sir, are you okay? You look like you've just seen a ghost.
Who assumes him to be a stowaway since she doesn't recognize him being on the flight list, but David manages to glide his way out of that conversation for a while. Walking down the aisle, he meets the U.S. Marshal and drug carrier he's escorting with him, Derek Buchanan and Antonio Zapatero. David tries to convince Derek to let him talk to Antonio, but it seems like Derek has already met David once before, repeating that if he does ever see him again, he would kill him. At least David got a broken pen from Derek anyways. David walks further up the aisle and meets a couple other extra characters. Deborah Anderson, a very paranoid woman, Philip Cheney, who's another flight attendant who is a lot more collected and calm than Olivia is, and Duncan, a fashion designer, along with his mannequin Suki. Deborah, Derek, and Duncan don't seem all too suspicious, but their names do start with D's, so David takes note of this, and we're given free reign to explore the rest of the plane. The plane is a really cool place to explore, even with how small and confined it is. There's a good amount of side quests to do and things to find here. If you do Deborah's side quests, she actually gives you more information relating on what happened to Peggy. Other quests also just give you more character development with people you wouldn't get otherwise.
Internet connection services have been implemented. They also link to a satellite that connects them to the ground. What is the lifespan of a standard aircraft? Yes.
Like I mentioned before, that's basically all of Teddy's side quests. I still can't really imagine this game without any of the side quests. Since you can just ignore every single one, it doesn't really seem like characters like Teddy have anything to do with the story other than he just gives you mementos and basic clues to go off of. With Teddy's side quests, you can gauge of how good friends him and David are, what his life is like, and all the kind of stuff they shoot the shit about, whether it be about food, sports, or any of the old cases they did together. Same goes for characters like Duncan. He isn't really important to the game's story at all, but he's still a fun character and you can do all these quests from just to get to know him a bit better. I love the gameplay loop of D4 so much. The only thing I don't like about it is how easy it can be to lock yourself out of doing the side quests. In the first area, if you move this luggage bag next to the door, that is progression to the end of the chapter. And every single time you walk by this door, which you're going to be doing a lot if you want to do all the side quests in this first part, David is going to mention to you that the luggage is in fact hitting the door and that he should probably move it to do something every single time you walk by it. It got really fucking annoying. The end of this chapter also has something like that as well, but it's much less obvious. You basically don't want to investigate any of these seats so you won't find this one specific clue. Because even though this is the end of the chapter, there is somehow still a good bit of side quests you can do. And once you are here, you can't go back to do the previous side quests you might have missed earlier. Meaning, if you have missed them, you gotta restart the entire chapter. So make sure you talk to Deborah, Olivia, and Derek as much as you can before you progress the chapter. This is the kind of thing Yakuza games do as well, and I hate it there too. Where there's this huge story moment happening and the game is pointing you in the direction of, you have to do this now, this is the most dire moment in the story. If you don't go here now, people are gonna fucking die, you're gonna fucking die, the world's gonna fucking blow up, you're gonna get ass fucked. But in reality, the game just opened up like 15 extra sub-stories and mini-games you can do. It's nowhere near as bad as it can be in a Yakuza game, but still, it gets really annoying. You can also just exit out of a dive back to David's apartment. whenever you want, doing extra side quests there, and you can just jump straight back into the dive wherever you left off. The idea of using your apartment as a main hub where you can refresh and reorganize is actually kind of reminiscent of Silent Hill 4's gameplay loop, where the apartment in that game is also your main hub, where you can evaluate your situation, heal up, manage your inventory, even have little side hauntings you could do and clear up. A nice little save spot. I really like this gameplay loop these two games do. Well, I half like it in Silent Hill 4, but still, it's a really unique and fun way of structuring a game like this. It feels like there's always a reason to go back and forth and explore, since there's always more stuff to do. Each time you do go back into David's apartment from a dive, you unlock a new side quest with Teddy, so it's best to exhaust as much as you can from everything in the dive first, then go back to the apartment just to check on if there's more you can do. Some side quests also require you to go to your apartment to grab an item, stuff like grabbing a movie magazine or tomorrow's hockey numbers. It does a lot with the idea they have, and each side quest is really fun to do. Once we do enough stuff on the end of this plane, we get to the other side to meet Roland Walker, a giant doctor with a fork and knife in hand who talks very vaguely and slow, kind of like a G-Man type character. After meeting him, lightning hits the plane and Zapatero manages to escape from Derek.
There you are! You're this young I've been hearing so much about. Not like I'm gonna spill the slop on thee, though. What do you need from me? Hey, papi! So how about you die, fucker?
Here we have probably the most well-known scene from the game, and for good reason, because it's fucking awesome. These might be some of the best QTE segments in any game that I've played. Yes, Azura's Wrath exists, and the Yakuza games, especially Judgment, have some great QTE segments with fantastic choreography. But D4, I feel, is the most inventive, interactive, and funniest in any game that I've seen use QTE events. These are the best use of QTEs in any game that I've ever played. I could only imagine how much better these could play using the Kinect, since you are doing so much more with so many movements, even in some bits you use the Kinect mic to yell at someone. It's such great stuff. Sadly, there are only 4 in the whole game. 1 in the Prologue, 1 in Episode 1, and 2 in Episode 2. After beating the ever-living shit out of Zapatero to get some answers from him on who D is, Olivia holds us up at gunpoint, implying she might have not actually been a regular stewardess after all. Before anything could happen, though, another lightning strike hits the plane, and everything seems very different after it hits. Olivia's gone, so is Zapatero, Duncan has a different outfit, and Deborah seems to have lost her life jacket. How could this have happened? Did we get knocked out? Did someone hijack the plane? After investigating a bit and putting some pieces together, we found out that we have actually gone back in time to the flight over to Washington. We heckled Derek a bit more, then David tries diving back home, but the mementos we have seem to lost their power. Then suddenly, an unknown attacker tases David, but he manages to land one hit on him, breaking one of the lenses on his sunglasses. David manages to grab a piece as a clue before passing out, thus ending Episode 1. Episode 2 begins back in the forest, with David passed out in the middle of the lake. Peggy actually walks up to David asking who he is, wanting to show him these frozen ducks. You can also talk to her again, and she tells you that she has 2 dads. Apparently she knows of David already, as it seems like she's heard of him from somewhere, which is odd since Peggy and David didn't meet until around 2002. David and little Peggy start talking, and he mentions his plans to try and change the past to meet Peggy again before she died. David wakes up in the middle of the night noticing Teddy's gone, but left his laptop open on the kitchen table. David decides to investigate, also noticing the case file relating to real blood murders next to it. Here we get to see how gruesome each murder really was. One victim being burnt to a crisp, the other turned into a fucking meat cube, and other having his skin turned inside out. Peggy's case being she got all the blood removed from her body. The game then gives us a flashback of the time of the murder, repeating the words that she told David. David gets into Teddy's computer and sees he has a bunch of locations brought up, including Old Man Clinic, David's apartment, and Peggy's old house. What do all these places have in common with each other? Does Teddy know something we don't? He does mention that somebody was here last night after coaxing it out of him the next morning, but he quickly glosses it over, like he doesn't want to talk about it. We also notice that Amanda's keeping the evidence box real close to her. Teddy takes it back from her, but she keeps a pretty familiar looking baseball. David realizes it's the one from the flight, the one he used to fight Zapatero with. With this new memento found, he can...
Whoa! Amanda? Ow! Oh, ow, ow!
Oh yeah, not before this happens first. Now why is Amanda keeping this ball from us? Does she not want us to investigate the case? It's really odd as to why, but we get another fun QTE segment out of this.
I don't think so!
We use the memento to get back onto the plane and get put under the seats inside the cargo hold. We also meet Olivia there. Turns out David's suspicions were right, and that Olivia is actually a DEA agent, along with Philip. They were both there to oversee both the Marshal and Zapatero's backup, supposedly. But after the lightning hit, Zapatero managed to escape to the cargo hold. Zapatero managed to steal Derek's gun, then Derek stole Philip's and made chase after him. This explains why Olivia seemed so strange at first, and how our stewardess would lose herself so easily. Also explains why she couldn't walk in those heels of hers. We give her our shoulder and follow a blood trail leading up to the cockpit. Olivia asks David why he cares so much about the case and what his own investigation could even entail, and since he can't really explain what the fuck he can actually do without sounding insane, he dodges the question and just says it's BPD business. After getting through a storage space, we find a ton of blood leading up to a door, looking like a gun battle occurred here with Derek and Zapatero. After turning on the power to the door, David asks Olivia why the DEA is even going after Real Blood. She answers that they think Real Blood is a lot more sinister and dangerous than anything else you could find off the ground. But it's also something that apparently can give you special powers, something that can make you feel like a god. Mentioning several deaths relating to it, such as people with their skin reversed, drowning in air, or having all the blood removed from their body. Olivia now catches on to David, realizing that he was a detective who quit the BPD 2 years ago after his wife died in a Real Blood related incident. More than likely forced to quit because he was the one person put under most suspicion of killing her, since at the crime scene, nobody else's DNA was there, just David and Peggy's. Coincidentally, David was also shot in the head, leading him to get memory loss of just that incident, basically leading to a straight dead end with no more evidence that could lead to anything else, which is why the case went cold. Olivia, now realizing who David actually is, holds him up at gunpoint.
Olivia, get your head down! Ow! Damn it!
So, that just happened. We hear Zapatero at the other end of the hall, sounding like he's being interrogated. Olivia can only stick behind for now, so David runs towards him to see what's really going on. We get one final QTE segment that's just the fucking coolest, man. These are still awesome every time I see them. Before we can get to Zapatero, we have one more exchange with Roland. Basically just says more vague stuff about David's past and crawls into a vent. We find Derek's jacket all bloodied up with a bullet hole in it, that being the last clue that David needed to confirm all the suspicions he's had on Derek. Derek wasn't just overseeing Zapatero. He was planning on using this flight as a way to interrogate him privately. Things got heated though as he got into a shootout with them, but he caught up and held him hostage from Philip and Olivia. He did all this to get information on Zapatero's dealer, as his wife and kid died 10 years ago, also due to a Real Blood related case. It explains why he was looking at Real Blood related case files in the flight to and over. He was planning on getting revenge on every courier and dealer of Real Blood to avenge his family. Kinda like what David is doing, but a whole lot less violent and with way fucking less tweaking. Derek doesn't take any of David's shit, but before we can try to convince him...
Marshal, enough! Marshal! You're the one I should have been after. Codename Delta. Philip Cheney!
Mr. David Young. A shame you didn't work it out sooner. Now, how may I help you? Die!
So as it turns out, the D that David was looking for wasn't Derek, Duncan, or Deborah, but a fourth D, codenamed Delta. Yeah, all that shit that Philip was huffing in his inhaler? Real Blood. Pretty easy to catch on to, as I guessed it my first time playing, but I never thought he would come out looking like a fucking Metal Gear villain. And that is where D4 has been for the past 10 fucking years. No closure, no ending, Nothing. Because the 2 times this game was released, it sold like shit, and nobody cared. But you might be asking, what the fuck even happened in this game? Who's D? What happens to David? Who's Roland? Well, let's go back a bit, and let me explain what I never got to, since there's a couple things I didn't show. So let me start explaining the story. Teddy's the most suspicious guy in the room. There's something at the end of the Prologue episode that he says, which is basically foreshadowing everything that happens in Season 1. Also, at the end of Episode 1, we get this cutscene with a suspicious old man outside of David's apartment, holding a stack of books. One of them reading, Atlas of Blood Diseases. This being the same guy Teddy was mentioning he spoke to at the beginning of Episode 2. He doesn't look like a cop like Teddy says though, because why would some beat cop on a drug case have all these books on blood diseases? And why were they looking up a BPD station, hockey rink, Oldman clinic, David's apartment, and Peggy's old house? Well, let me show this after credits scene of Episode 2 really quick.
Dr. Oldman.
That thing we discussed. I've arranged it, just like you wanted. Now will you be able to meet my expectations?
Yeah, ain't that some shit? So as it turns out, Teddy was working for Oldman the whole time on getting David through the case. But why? Oldman wants to work with Teddy to lean David in the right direction to fix the past and save Peggy. How does he know that David has the ability to time travel? Simple. Oldman's David. Oldman is another version of David who managed to travel back in time to the incident where Peggy fell into the lake. Hence why she mentions she has 2 dads. Presumably, her birth father died trying to save her, and David adopted her in his place to act as her foster father. Also at the end of Episode 1, when Oldman goes to meet Teddy, relating to the books in the Hikiko media video, he brings up the full texture of the book, which actually reads, Blood-borne diseases. Knowing that Peggy has a blood disease, he starts researching blood-borne diseases, opening up Oldman Clinic. In his research and development after so many years, he creates a drug and referred to as B, or just blood, which goes on to have multiple different strands, but can prove to be fatal to most users. The first case dating back to 2002 when a high schooler collapsed and died after use of it along with a whole bunch of steroids. The blood strands would become very well known in the underground drug world, eventually turning into the creation of real blood, which is the strand being most used today. Now how did I come to this conclusion if there's no concrete evidence pointing to Oldman being David? How can there be 2 Davids? For starters, remember back at the scene of Peggy's murder. Only David and Peggy's DNA and prints were found, yet Oldman's wasn't, despite David recalling that he was the first one on the scene. David and Oldman both have the same eye color, not to mention, they have the exact same broken watch. The one that Peggy specifically gave to David with her first paycheck, broken in the same way. If you want true, honest-to-God evidence they are the same person, in the Hikiko video, he rips textures from the game and sees that both of their faces are not only the exact same, but also share the exact same bullet wound on the same spot on their head. Oldman just covers it up better. So the entire goal of David finding the memento he can use to go back into the past to save Peggy, it already happened once before. It happened to Oldman, the memento being the feather that he carries on his jacket, the one of the white owl. This memento taking him back to the day Peggy fell into the ice, spawning an entirely new timeline where he acts as Peggy's foster father, meaning there are 2 Davids existing at once. Oldman has been trying to spend all this time to see if he could cure Peggy's disease to little to no avail, which is why he needed David to go back and fix everything. Both David and Oldman's goal is to fix the past so they can save Peggy. If this is true, then what exactly happened at the scene of Peggy's death? I can't really say for certain. We can only theorize that David, since he was in the BPD at this time, heard of real blood, hearing that it can give you some kind of powers and possibly heal you. He tried it on Peggy, and obviously that didn't go well. After this happened, it could have been a possible double suicide where David kills Peggy to put her out of her misery, and Peggy killing David possibly because he can't live with the guilt of almost killing her. I'm assuming this due to the imagery at the beginning of the prologue where Peggy is seen aiming a gun at David. David, however, survives this and forgets everything that happened that night. This would make sense, however, In Teddy's report on the scene, it's shown that the test results for blood were negative. So this could have been a brand new strand of real blood that Oldman was testing on Peggy, but failed. Why the shooting happened could only really be assumed to be a double suicide. I thought at first it could have been a shootout by mistake, like maybe David mistook Oldman for an intruder, but according to the case files, Oldman cites that by the time he found Peggy, David was already out cold, specifically saying he wasn't there anymore. This could be alluding to something else, like maybe there's a possibility he was diving for the first time and came back after a certain sequence of events happened, but we can only really guess. If you thought that was fucking insane, you know the entire time Peggy's last words that she said to David were, "Look for D"? Well, again, cited in the Hikiko video, he found out that that isn't actually all of what Peggy says. She actually says, "Don't look for D." But the don't part is at a much, much lower volume in-game.
Look for D. Don't. Look for D. Don't. Look for D.
Now, why does she say this to David? Let's go back to the plan. Episode 2 ends with David and Delta in a fight, not really looking like he can win it. Cutting even further back to the prologue, we could talk to Teddy and he mentions details of the flight and what happened. He says along with Derek, they also found a John Doe among those killed. This John Doe is actually David. Couldn't this be Zapatero or Olivia though? Nope. It couldn't be Zapatero because they would easily identify that it's him. And it can't be Olivia because they had mentioned it would be a Jane Doe. It can only make sense if it's David. So David dies with his encounter with Delta. Peggy told David this so he wouldn't get killed by Delta. Does this mean that Delta is D? Maybe, since D4 is only one season, we don't have anything else to go off if Delta knew anybody more powerful than him. Could Zapatero be D? No, not really. Zapatero does mention D with his first encounter with David and knows him by name, but it's possible he knows of him by proxy by being around Derek. Derek was one of the first people to know of David and started writing case files on him due to suspicion. He could have known about David by that, or he had information passed on to him. Maybe he could have been working with Delta, since it seems like Phil was trying to protect Zapatero. He does love that real blood stuff. So basically what David has put himself through is a constant loop of death, over and over again. From Peggy dying to him getting killed on the plane. Peggy knew of Delta possibly by proxy from Oldman or someone else, or D could be someone else entirely that Delta could be working under, but again, we don't know. Which this all comes back to the last thing Teddy said at the end of the prologue. Trying to give David a reason to live. Probably knowing how pointless this whole deal is since he has the knowledge from Oldman that this is a loop David is putting himself through. Teddy has told David several times that he can't change the past, but he refuses to believe that. He's way too stubborn to give up his search, even going down to Greenville to find some information. So Teddy just lets him keep doing his search. This is likely why Amanda was mad at Teddy by the end of the prologue, and why she tried taking the evidence box and baseball for herself, so David could stop killing himself over and over again for this search. Speaking of, who's Amanda? She's a cat. No, later, she is just some regular old cat. Presumably, because of the gunshot wound of being in the ICU, it gives David these weird hallucinations. Because of that, he sees his cat Amanda as this girl who just acts like a cat. Why she wears a leotard, I couldn't tell you. You could probably guess this by just the way she acts and how both David and Teddy treat her like she is an actual cat. In some of Peggy's letters, she also mentions the family cat, Amanda. And also on the plane, she shows up as a white cat. So that's clear, but what about Roland? Roland is someone also spawned by David's head wound. Roland looks like this and acts like this because that is what he looks like through David's perspective under so many drugs in the ICU. Why the knife and fork? They're there because when David was being operated on, he also heard the scalpels they used on him, and they sounded similar to the same ways you would rub a knife and fork together. Roland's existence is basically just to vaguely tell David that this stuff has happened before and he's kind of chasing his own tail. This is further cemented that once you talk to Roland for the first time and do his first side quest, he leaves all of Peggy's notes inside the house, letting you read back on what happened in the past. In Peggy's letters, it's also told how her disease affected her and that Peggy was actually pregnant. Presumably, now this is just my little theory, she took real blood doses from Oldman as he developed them, trying to find a real proper cure. Stated that for years she didn't show any symptoms of her disease, but in one of her notes in 2010, she says that she took a bath and she saw there was blood in the water. saying that her disease might have come back again. Sadly, the dose she got before she died, whether it was a failed experiment from Oldman or a bad shot that David gave her, is what got her in the end. So to sum things up, D is possibly either Delta or David himself. Oldman is David from a timeline where he found the memento he was looking for. However, David was going on a wild goose chase to save Peggy, not knowing that he's trapped himself in this constant death loop for the both of them. Real blood was a drug made to cure Peggy's disease that spiraled completely out of control in the underground drug world, giving people either superhuman abilities or the most gruesome deaths imaginable. There could be maybe dozens or hundreds of different Davids out there doing the exact same shit, and we will never, ever get any closure. So all we can do is theorize and dream, but this is what makes the most sense. We were originally going to get a Season 2 of D4. Reportedly, there are texture files of the icons for it going all the way up to Episode 3 or 4. There is a screenshot of one of the locations in Season 2. It looks like Olivia is tied up in what seems to be either a log cabin or perhaps the hockey rink that Teddy was looking at pictures of, and at the bottom right of the image we can see a hockey stick. But this is all we've gotten for the past 10 years. So, D4 ends in the most anticlimactic way possible with no hopes of a real continuation. I hate D4. I hate it because of how much I love it, and it's never getting continued fucking ever. I'm not exaggerating this when I say this is one of the best adventure games I've ever played. It would easily be one of my all-time favorites if it was, you know, fucking complete. Like, I can live with there never being a 26th word. I can live with no follow-up to Gradius Attorney. I can live with no Gravity Rush 3. But the thing is about those games is that while they're fantastic, they are fully finished games. Games you can play from start to finish and enjoy and have no problems with because you can just enjoy them as they are. You can't fucking do that with D4. D4 has potential to be easily one of the best games ever, but because of the fact that it sold terribly on both Xbox and Steam when it got re-released, it's never happening. It's been 10 years since D4 came out, and since then, Swery left Access Games due to health complications that started during the development of D4. Ever since, he's formed his own game company, White Owls, and has made The Missing, Deadly Premonition 2, Good Life, Death Game Hotel, and the upcoming Hotel Barcelona. So Swery is doing pretty alright for himself on the indie game scene. What has Access Games done, however? Two things. Fuck all. They have done nothing with D4, and it will probably continue to do nothing with D4. So many people have asked Swery countless times if it'll ever continue, and if he'll ever buy the rights back to it from Access Games. And all roads leading to an astounding no. Now, what I'm about to talk about is all hearsay, but apparently, Swery fucking hates Access Games. Nobody really knows or has a proper answer as to why, and Swery won't answer why, but supposedly he said that he just doesn't want to give Access Games money, or to speak with them ever again. An idea of a Kickstarter to buy the rights to D4 was brought up on a stream he did a while ago, but he shot that idea down because he would still have to give money to Access Games. Again, I don't know what happened between the two, or if this is even true, but it seems like Swery fucking despises Access Games, and the chances of D4 ever coming back are in the negatives. So that sucks, but I have an idea. Not specifically just for Swery, but for anyone. Hell, even Access Games or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just make another game that plays exactly like D4. The interactivity with the environment, the abundance of side content and things to do, constant rewards for exploration and bonuses you can look through and clothes you can equip, the fucking phenomenal QTE segments. I just want another game to do that. You know what? Fuck it. I want Somnium Files 3 to do that.
Fuck yeah!
I don't know if there's ever going to be an AI 3. I would love one, but I would like it more if it had the same systems as D4 for its gameplay. More side stuff to do and exploration you could do around levels. Somnium 1 and 2 are already built around detective work and investigation, and you can examine every single object in an area. Hell, Somnium 2 you even have moments where you can walk around the location and search for clues. These games also have QGE segments, but they're very simple and not really that well choreographed.
Where'd the porn go?
If these games had the same ones D4 did, then holy shit, that would be Kino. Out of all the games that you can make right now to just rip off D4, I think Somnium Files would fit perfectly with its gameplay. Please, I beg you, I am fucking pleading with you, Kotaro Uchikoshi. Please just rip off D4 for the gameplay of Somnium Files 3. I can assure you, nobody will give a shit. In fact, people would cheer. Honestly, fuck it. Just put David in Somnium 3. He'd be a perfect fit. Olivia and Iva both have the same voice actors anyways. Fucking do whatever.
Why do I have to listen to Date diss me all the time?
Actually, there's a couple of things I forgot to mention earlier. Once you get to episode 2, the game actually opens up and gives you some little bonus unmarked side objectives you can do for a little extra medals, like throwing wood in the fireplace or clearing up vines. The game also spawns Amazon packages at your door that can give you either music, beards, extra clothes, a bunch of other stuff like that, a bunch of little bonuses. On the topic of music, this game's soundtrack is also fucking phenomenal. The composers they got, Yuichi Takanuchi and Teratani Tomomi, fucking stellar job on the soundtrack. Just about every single song on this game's OST is just a fucking banger, dude. The main theme, big standout. I love it a lot. Arousal, which is the theme that plays whenever you go into a dive. Amazing fucking track. The song Drink, Dom, Dead, Die, which plays in, I think, 2 of the QTE segments in this game. Fucking amazing song, great shit. Funny thing, I think it rips off the main theme to a TV show that Swery watched. I forget the name of it. In editing, I'll put it up on screen. That's another thing too, actually. You may recall that Deadly Premonition was actually at one point Rainy Woods, and Swery got into a lot of fucking trouble with that game because of how similar it was to Twin Peaks. So much to the fact where a borderline on copyright infringement. D4 is no different, really, except he managed to actually get away with it better. You may recall that I mentioned how this game looks similar to Scanner Darkly. As someone who has now just recently watched Scanner Darkly, this game kinda fucking rips off a little plot point of it. That being, this game is mainly heavily drug-focused, much like Scanner Darkly. Where in Scanner Darkly, they're looking for a drug that just goes by the name of D, that really fucks you up. In this game, the center focus is around drugs that can also really fuck you up. But instead of looking for a drug named D, you were looking for a person named D. This game also basically just borrows the fucking entire plot to the movie Memento. I haven't seen Memento, so I can't say it, but basically the entire plot of that movie is that a detective and his wife, they got assaulted in a robbery, but instead of him getting shot and getting time travel powers, he got shot and now he has short-term memory loss, so he writes down notes and shit all over like his body and just everywhere basically, so he can track down who killed his wife. They also straight up lifted a line from the fucking movie. That thing Teddy says at the episode 1, that's from Memento. That's straight lifted from Memento, which is really funny. There's also a DLC costume that is straight up just the tattoo, the tattooed body of the detective of Memento with like all the shit on it. It's really fucking funny. It's a DLC shirt too. It's like one of the I think 2 DLC packs that are actually like additional bonus content and not just like unlockers and shit. But yeah, no, lot of cool shit that I forgot to mention. Sorry about that. You can tell it's 1 a.m. as I'm recording this bit. I just need more D4, man, in any way possible. I'm fucking begging you. All I want to say is just how much I love D4. I'm so fucking mad that this game is never getting followed up and that so little people played it at launch, because this game's genuinely phenomenal. It's such a shame that this is the second game I've played now that sold like total ass on launch, so the IP got abandoned for nearly a decade. But at least Cat is an Astrobot. Where's David? All he gets is a reference in Deadly Premonition 2, and that game fucking sucks!
It's always this way. When I'm diving into the past, and I fall asleep, I get knocked out, I end up back here.
You sucking cock. So many goddamn cutscenes. All they do is fucking talk in this goddamn motherfucking game. All they do is fucking talk. Give me these goddamn things.
Give me these goddamn things. You all remember that when he was like, he's like, attention moviegoers.
Free Shavakadu! Yeah.
Dude, Duncan checks in. Y'all remember that movie?
It's Dunstan checks in.
Fuck!
Make a joke about this for the video.
What?
What I'm doing.
Me when I'm...
I can't put that in the video.
You are like...